something that actually threatens your safety. The problem is the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And this is most noticeable when somebody's having a nightmare in the middle of the night. And if you've ever had that experience, Joy, or I'm sure your listeners have that experience, or at least know somebody who has. And it doesn't matter how crazy or ridiculous or stupid the dream may be, something really dumb like a cheeseburger and his two hot dog friends chasing you down the street throwing rocks at you. It's not going to happen. Never going to happen. Or it could even be something super realistic like a war veteran having a PTSD dream about being back on the front lines, even though the war was 30 years ago. In both cases, neither scenario is real. It's just an imagined scenario within a dream while in deep sleep. But the mind thinks it's actually happening. You're cozy, comfortable, safe in bed, but the mind thinks you're being chased down the street by a gigantic cheeseburger, or you're back on the front lines. And so during deep sleep, it'll start to change your physiology. The brain will start to create that adrenaline, that cortisol, those hormones of stress and anxiety and fear. And adrenaline, you probably maybe heard those crazy stories of grandmothers lifting cars off of babies. That's adrenaline doing that. And so this is now coursing into your bloodstream. The brain creates these molecules called neuropeptides, hundreds of millions of these molecules dumping into your bloodstream from your brain. And these molecules send a signal of emotion to your body. That's why you can differentiate between different feeling states. You can tell.
This is Joy Rowland, and you are listening to the Joyful Money Podcast. This is episode number 86, Overcome Fear and Anxiety, Program Yourself for Confidence with Craig Meriwether. Welcome to Joyful Money, the podcast where we focus on making money the joyful way. We are done with the stress and anxiety that typically come with making money. We'll feature extraordinary and inspiring business owners who are making a huge impact by sharing their gifts and talents with the world. Pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea and let's go. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 86. I'm so excited for this episode. I have a very special guest. His name is Craig Meriwether. He is a hypnotherapist. I'm so excited for our conversation today. Welcome to the show, Craig.
Hi, Joy. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really been looking forward to talking with you.
Awesome. So, Craig, why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us what you do?
Yeah, well, I was excited to talk with you because you talk so much about mindset, and hypnotherapy is a great asset in working with mind, because therapeutic hypnosis works basically with the subconscious mind. A lot of those automatic responses and reactions that we have to triggers, negative triggers out in our world. And what's fascinating about it, it's not this magical, mystical thing that you've maybe seen on TV or even those shows you may see in the comedy clubs or Las Vegas. It's a extraordinary therapeutic tool because you have the ability to change the instructions that are within your subconscious mind, whether they got there through a traumatic experience or just mirroring what happened in the home as you're growing up, just stuff you learned while growing up, or just through life experiences, the way you respond to life. And you're allowed to change those anytime you want. You're the one who put them in there. And not to say that if you went through a traumatic experience that was your fault or it should have happened, but the way you hold on to that experience, the way you filed it, so to speak, in your subconscious mind, you did that probably unconsciously, certainly, and through trauma and terror and fear and anger, but you're the one who put it in there. Again, not to blame the victim or say it was your fault, but it actually becomes very empowering, because if you're the one who put it in there, then that means you're the one who can change it. And that's what's fascinating about this work. I'm not here to fix anybody. And, hypnotherapy in and of itself doesn't fix anybody. You fix yourself using these tools. And that's what's extraordinary about it. You don't have to go looking for someone else to fix you, which obviously if you need your appendix out, you want somebody to fix you and help you. You break your leg, you want to go to the doctor, you want to fix you. But in terms of a lot of this mindset stuff that we're dealing with, the fears and the anxiety, the anger,
Mm.
whether you know what it's related to or not. It's under your control. You can do something about it. And therapeutic hypnosis is a great way because by just relaxing a little bit, resting, you can quiet down that conscious level of mind and access the subconscious mind where all this stuff is held. So it's a really amazing technique, amazing modality for healing. Just not only emotional issues and thought processes, limiting beliefs, but also even physical issues. Does well with pain, healing acceleration. Lots of studies out there showing the efficacy of hypnotherapy. Again, not just with mindset issues and emotional issues, but with physical issues as well. So it's really amazing modality.
Well, like this is a topic that really fascinates me, and I've opened myself up to understanding more about hypnotherapy. I know how effective it can be. Many times, many people struggle to make progress in their businesses because there is this script running in the background in the subconscious. And your conscious mind might say, oh, I want to make, let's say, $1 million per year. But in your subconscious, if you have a script that's running that keeps you stuck, makes you
Yeah.
afraid, when you lose confidence, maybe when you are about to make offers online and tell people about your products, you lose confidence, you don't take the actions that will get you the results you want. That's where the power of the subconscious comes in. And I love this so much because it's really not about just ranting affirmations every single day. We have to just go deep and understand why we have certain behaviors that kind of run in the background that we keep doing over and over again, regardless of what our conscious mind says it wants to achieve. So, for example, with weight loss, you hear people say, I want to lose weight, but over and over again, you see yourself in front of the fridge eating all of those foods you told yourself just 2 hours ago you weren't going to eat. So, like, I love this topic very much, Craig. I want you to tell us how would you use hypnotherapy to help people overcome fear, anxiety, and to build their confidence?
Yeah, it's that's a great question. And because so many of us deal with fears, whether they're huge fears or just slight fears, the feeling state of fear and the feeling state of anxiety are actually warning signals to your
Mm,
body from your brain as controlled by the mind that there's danger in your external environment. And in and of itself, you never really want to get rid of fear and anxiety. That's part
mm,
of the human emotional spectrum, and we want that. We that fear keeps us from walking down that dark alley at midnight, even though it's a shortcut home. Uh, Take the long way home. Take the lighted streets. Take the crowded streets. That fear keeps us from getting in the middle of a fight in the street, or it's stepping too close to the edge of the Grand Canyon. The anxiety gives you that little trepidation that maybe there's something dangerous in your external environment, and that's great when there's something dangerous in your external environment, something that actually threatens your safety. The problem is the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined, and this is most noticeable when somebody's having a nightmare in the middle of the night. And if you've ever had that experience, Joy, or I'm sure your listeners have that experience, or at least know somebody who has. And it doesn't matter how crazy or ridiculous or stupid the dream may be. It's something really dumb, like a cheeseburger and two hot dog friends chasing you down the street, throwing rocks at you. It's not going to happen. Never going to happen. Or it could even be something super realistic, like a war veteran having a PTSD dream about being back on the front lines, even though the war was 30 years ago. In both cases, neither scenario is real. It's just an imagined scenario within a dream while in deep sleep. But the mind thinks it's actually happening. You're cozy, comfortable, safe in bed, but the mind thinks you're being chased down the street by a gigantic cheeseburger, or you're back on the front lines. And so during deep sleep, it'll start to change your physiology. The brain will start to create that adrenaline, that cortisol, those hormones of stress and anxiety and fear. And adrenaline, you probably maybe heard those crazy stories of grandmothers lifting cars off of babies. That's adrenaline doing that. And so this is
mm,
now coursing into your bloodstream. The brain creates these molecules called neuropeptides, hundreds of millions of these molecules dumping into your bloodstream from your brain. And these molecules send the signal of emotion to your body. That's why you can differentiate between different feeling states. You can tell the difference between fear and anger and overwhelm and depression, sadness and joy and happiness and love because of these molecules. These are literal molecules of fear, molecules of anxiety now coursing through your bloodstream, looking for the right cells to connect to. 300% more blood is moving to the big muscles of your arms to fight, 300% more blood moving to the big muscles of your legs to escape, all while you're cozy and comfortable in bed. You're literally changing your physiology through thought alone because your mind thinks you're in danger, and that feeling state of anxiety and fear and anger are warning signals. So if you're in a building and somebody pulls a fire alarm, the lights, strobe lights go off, the sirens go off, warning everybody that there's danger and you need to get to safety right away. That's what your body's trying to signal you through the sirens and lights of feeling states instead. And that anxiety is not there to, cause discomfort for the sake of discomfort and wreck your life and ruin your day. It's there to warn you that there's danger. The problem is, again, the mind can't tell the difference between a real safety issue or something that's just imagined. But through thought alone, you can change your physiology. So that's what we do through thought and through even plain pretend and using your imagination. We can change your physiology. And that's a big part of hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, those kind of exercises and techniques. You can use that to change how you feel in your body. Now, a lot of those triggers are coming from issues that may have happened in the past. Your subconscious mind is for you. It's trying to protect you. It just may be doing so in a not very resourceful way, a very resilient way. It's trying to protect you. And to do so, it's using what you've experienced in the past as a guidepost on how to keep you safe. Even if that thing happened 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it's trying to protect you from ever experiencing it again. So there's a file of that traumatic event in your subconscious mind. There's this huge filing cabinet of all the different experiences, situations, and circumstances that have caused fear and anxiety and stress and trauma and terror and anger and humiliation and embarrassment. And it doesn't want you to experience that again. And so if anything in your external environment looks like one of those files, it'll set off the warning signals. The thing is, you're in control of that filing cabinet. And so you are allowed to do with the file, but until you do, you're just going to grip onto those files. And the subconscious mind, yes, it's running your immune system and running your digestive system and growing our hair and splitting our cells and running our respiratory system and beating our heart all automatically. We don't have to think about, which is great. It's holding on to those habits we have of like tying our shoes and riding a bicycle and walking down the street and buttoning our shirt. We don't have to think about those things. Those are all automatic within the subconscious mind. But again, its main task, its main job is to keep you safe, keep you protected, and it will emotionalize your body with feeling states of fear or anxiety to try to warn you that there's danger. So it's a very highly emotionalized mind. Now, the conscious mind, that's the logical mind, the analytical mind, the mind that creates your goals, sets up the plans to create those goals, the plan for your day, your plan for your week, your 5-year plan, and the willpower to take the action steps to achieve those goals. That's the conscious mind. But what neuroscience says is that conscious mind only makes up 5% of mind. Subconscious mind is at least 95% of mind, maybe even more, according to some studies. So whenever there's conflict between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. And that's why it can be very frustrating when you have to make those calls, or you have to get up in front of a bunch of people and do that presentation, or go to the bank and ask for the money, or whatever it is you're fearing or having anxiety around, because maybe something happened way long ago that makes it unsafe to be in front of people.
Yeah.
You gave that book report in the 6th grade and it didn't go very well, and everybody, the kids laughed, and now you have this file that it's embarrassing and humiliating and not safe to be in front of people. Well, and maybe that kept you safe when you're in the 6th grade and 7th grade. But that doesn't help you when you're in your 30s or your 40s and you're needing to do the presentation to get the word out about your business or the service that you have. And so when there's conflict between the logical mind, yeah, I can get up there. I need to do this. I need to go to the networking event. I need to give the presentation at the conference. I need to get in front of the board of directors and give the big plan I have for the year. That's logical. That and you can analyze it and say, yes, I absolutely have to do this because I can get the promotion, I can get the business, I can make the sale. But emotionally, if you're like, yeah, but last time I was in front of people back when I was 10 years old, it didn't go
Mm,
really well. And I was humiliated and I was scared and I was afraid. And this looks like that because now we have to get up in front of a bunch of people. And so we're going to shut it down, and so your subconscious mind pretty much all unconsciously will shut it down and you get the procrastination or you get the fear or you run your car into a telephone pole on your way to the meeting and now you can't make it or you get sick the day before.
mm,
Logically it doesn't make any sense, but that's not the part of mind that's in charge. It's the emotional mind. By quieting down that conscious mind, you have access to the subconscious. And if, let's say, for example, using the 10-year-old who, something happened at school and they were humiliated and embarrassed and kids taunted them for the next couple of weeks because kids can be mean, and that really
mm,
affected them. And that file is in the filing cabinet, but they have access to the filing cabinet and they can hold on to it if you want for the rest of your life, or you can shred it, you can do away with it, or you can rewrite it. But maybe that child needs help. Maybe that child needs compassion. Maybe that child
mm,
needs kindness. Maybe a child needs to be say, it wasn't your fault. And you can
mm,
tell that child that. Remember, the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And it'll change your physiology to match what you're thinking and feeling. And so, even though it may seem a little ridiculous to imagine going to the 10-year-old you and saying, that wasn't fair, that wasn't right, and that shouldn't have happened, but you're a good kid and I love you, and create that healing with that child, even though that may seem a little ridiculous because you're 40 years old now, or 35 years old, or 50 years old, it may seem a little ridiculous. The mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And just as having a nightmare about a cheeseburger chasing you down the street can change your physiology to the point of armoring yourself to protect you with that adrenaline, that cortisol, and moving the blood into the big muscles of your body. What if you use the same kind of techniques to heal? And
mm,
that's what's extraordinary about this work and why it doesn't take a long time. This isn't talk therapy. We don't talk about the issue over and over and over again. And there can be a lot of healing there, and there can be a lot of therapeutic value in doing that kind of work. But that's not what this is. This is finding those files, those instructions that have been put in, whether to keep you safe or just how you think that's how life works because we are mirroring something in the home. And that doesn't work for you, you're allowed to change it. And
mm,
by building the confidence of implanting those instructions and then practicing that confidence, and the easiest way to practice confidence is just to pretend you have
mm,
the confidence. And again, that seems a little ridiculous, and why would that work? But what is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. What you practice, you get better at. And we know this from playing the piano or the guitar or learning dance or learning martial arts or learning a foreign language, learning to ride a bicycle, learning to drive a car. What you practice, you get better at. But what if you're practicing anxiety? What if you're
mm,
practicing fear? And so a big part of the healing work is not only just what we do within a session, the healing we do within a session and the rewiring literally of the brain by creating new neural pathways to experience life in a different way. Not only do we do the healing work in session, but there's practice. Because again, what you do the most is what is wired into your nervous system, into your physiology, literally into your brain. And so why not wire confidence? Why not wire happiness? Why not wire strength and power? And simply by sitting on a couch and visualizing the success of getting in front of people. And let's just say, use the example of giving the keynote speech at a conference. Sitting down and just imagining how successful that's going to be. will literally
Mm.
wire that into the brain. There's a research study that was done back in the 90s. And that was right around when a lot of the SPECT scans and MRI technology, where we could watch a brain in real time, was starting to come online and be developed, and researchers had access to this equipment. And so a group of researchers wanted to watch the brain in real time as it learned something new. And so before that, all we knew about the brain was through sociological studies and autopsies. And so to have this technology that started in the 80s and 90s of being able to watch a brain with
Mm.
MRIs and SPECT scans and things like that was pretty extraordinary and opened up this whole new realm of research. So researchers wanted to watch a brain and learn something new. They picked piano, and they brought in a group of volunteers who didn't know how to play piano, and they showed them simple little exercises and scales and little songs you learn as a beginner. And those volunteers came in for 2 hours a day and played piano, practiced piano, all the things they were taught. They practiced piano, the scales, the exercises, the little songs. They had a second group who didn't learn anything about the piano, but just came in and doodled on the piano for a couple of hours every day for 7 days straight. Weren't learning anything, we're just moving around the keyboard and just randomly playing notes. They had a third group who was a control group, and they didn't do anything. They didn't learn anything new, because doing this kind of research, you want to compare and to contrast. Here's a brain that doesn't do anything, doesn't learn anything new. Here's a brain learning piano. What are the differences? Compare and contrast. But what's interesting is they had a fourth group, and the fourth group only pretended to play piano. And so they brought them in, they showed them the simple little scales and exercises, little songs. But instead of sitting at the piano, they sat in a recliner on the couch, and they only pretended in their imagination to play piano. 2 hours a day, 7 days straight. At the end of the 7 days, they hook everybody up to the MRIs to see how the brains changed. The control group didn't do anything. They didn't learn anything new. Nothing changed their brain. No big mystery there. The group that actually practiced piano, practiced the little songs, practiced the scales, practiced the exercises, they developed a new neural network in a part of the brain for music. They literally rewired their brain. And it looked like, oh yeah, they're learning music. Here it is in the part of the brain for music, new neural pathways, neurons connecting together, wiring together. Makes sense. Again, no big mystery there. They're rewiring the brain because they're learning something new. And then they're practicing that. The group who only just randomly played stuff on the piano didn't develop any new neural pathways because they weren't learning anything. They weren't doing
Mm.
anything new. They were just plunking around on the piano. But what's extraordinary is that the group who only pretended to practice the piano developed the same neural network in the same part of their brain. Even though they never touched the piano, their fingers never worked the keys, they never heard any music, they didn't read any sheet music on the piano. Their brains, just because they pretended they were a piano player, just because they pretended they were learning how to play piano, rewired their brains to look like they were playing piano. And so just through imagination alone, you can literally change your physiology, change your brain in measurable ways in just a short amount of time. If some of your listeners may be old enough to remember the 1970s and the Olympics, or if you're a fan of the Olympics, you may know that the Soviet Union was very dominant in gymnastics in the 1970s. They won everything. It was Nadia Comaneci, if you remember her, and all the extraordinary gymnasts from the Soviet Union. They won everything, the gold, silver, and bronze. They won all the world championships. And no one could figure out how they were so far superior to every other gymnastics team in the world. And in the late 70s, early 80s, some of the gymnasts, some of the athletes, and some of the coaches started to defect. And what they told the world is that they would spend at least 50% of their time in mental rehearsal. So yes, they would spend the time on the mats or the parallel bars or the rings or whatever event they were doing. They would practice that, and then they'd go sit on a couch. They'd go sit on a recliner, close their eyes, and run the routine in their mind over and over and over again successfully. And
Uh-huh.
maybe it was just the last 30 seconds of the dismount, or maybe it was just the triple spin, or maybe it's the entire thing, and maybe it's slow motion, maybe it's regular speed. But they'd run it over and over and over again. And now we understand why that worked so well, because they literally wiring success into their brains just by pretending they were doing it. And now I guarantee you that every single Olympic athlete, probably every single professional athlete, does some sort of visual rehearsal some sort of guided visualization for their event, whatever sport they're doing, whether it's baseball and they're knocking it out of the park, or it's football or soccer, soccer here in America, football the rest of the world, whether it's gymnastics, swimming, whatever it is. They're mentally, I guarantee you, they're mentally rehearsing because they know now that'll wire into your head. So why aren't we as business people doing that?
Yeah.
Especially if we have to go to the bank, especially if we have to go to investors, especially if we have to make that sales call. Why
Mm,
not
mm,
spend the day before you have to do a sales call, or give the big speech, or give the presentation at the big meeting? Why not mentally rehearse successfully doing that? Now, maybe an hour before the meeting, you're not really going to rewire your brain, but what if you did that for a week or two beforehand, let alone do it every day for a year? Just spend 5 minutes. The thing of it is, what if you can do that for playing piano, if you do that for gymnastics, if you do that for any sort of sport or even business, you can wire yourself for success. What if you're not? What if you're visualizing failure? What if
mm,
you're thinking about all the things that are going to go wrong? What if you think about you're going to give that speech and the people are going to laugh at you? Are you not then wiring failure into your brain? And so that's what's so extraordinary about this is a lot of this stuff happens unconsciously, but if you can take control of it, and therapeutic hypnosis is a great way to deal with the deeper issues of the hurt and the pain and the trauma. Maybe there was that thing that happened when you were a
mm,
child that has affected the way you view the world and your safety and comfort in the world. Hypnotherapy is
mm,
great at doing that, but you also have the ability to work this stuff at home as well. And so if you do have that meeting coming up, or the sales call, or the keynote speech, or whatever it is you're doing, what if you spend some time mentally rehearsing how well that's going to go? And then you
mm,
can literally wire that into your brain. And it doesn't take long. Within a week, those piano players had showed visible signs of rewiring their brain, neurons connecting together. And there was a study that was done by the University College of London that came out a few years ago. And it says it takes 66 days to create a habit, an automatic habit within the subconscious mind. This doesn't take long. This doesn't take years and years and years. Within a week, you could have literally rewired your brain, and within about 8 weeks, you'll have a new habit of confidence, a new habit of happiness, a new habit of strength, of power, of confidence, whatever it is you want. You can have it. It does take some effort. And a good example of this is the Dalai Lama still meditates every day. The man's 89 years old. The Dalai Lama, the head of the Tibetan Buddhist spiritual community, he still meditates every day. And if you read his books, he talks about the anger, he talks about the sorrow, he talks about the despair of what's going on in Tibet. The Chinese government is still bulldozing down monasteries to build roads and other government buildings, and arresting his monks and torturing his monks. That's still going on. And of course,
mm,
as a human being, he's going to feel despair and anger around that. It'd be strange if he didn't. But he doesn't
mm,
want that to be who he is. So every day he practices loving kindness and compassion. That's who he wants to be. That's his essence. So every day he still practices loving kindness and compassion meditation. And if anybody was to have it down by now, you think it'd be that guy. He's not married. He doesn't have any kids. He has a staff of people to meet his every need and want. And yes, he's running this huge community, this organization, but he doesn't have a lot of the other life issues that a lot of us deal with. Small
yeah,
children, teenagers, kids in their 20s, elderly parents, let alone running a business or your career or your service, whatever you're doing. He still finds time to practice every day. Yes, he has a staff of people to make sure he has that time. But again, if anybody was to have it down by now, you think it'd be that guy. And yet he's
mm,
still practicing. 89 years old. He's pretty much probably been practicing since he was a little kid, 6, 7, 8 years old. And so that's a great um, lesson to learn, that there's a certain relentlessness to this
mm,
work. Just like working out, getting your body in shape. You just don't go to a personal trainer once at the gym, work out again a second time that week, and then you're done and you look like a Marvel superhero for the rest of your life. A lot of your listeners may know the fitness guru back in the 1960s and 70s, Jack LaLanne. He had his own line of gyms. He was on all the talk shows, Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas, and and Johnny Carson, and you do feats of strength, and you talk about health and juicing, and he's a vegetarian. This is back in the 1970s, and you talk about health, and he's the first big health guru that everybody knew about, Jack LaLanne. And his big feat every year was to swim across a lake on his birthday, pulling rowboats filled with people. And he was doing that into his 80s.
Mm.
He was working out the day before he died at the age of 96. There's a
Wow.
relentlessness to this. He just didn't stop at the age of 40 and just looked like that the rest of his life. The Dalai Lama just didn't stop at the age of, 35. It's like, well, I've done enough meditation for the rest of my life. He continues to do the work. A lot of your listeners, I'm guessing, probably are into personal growth and self-help kind of stuff and personal development, probably know Tony Robbins.
Yes.
And there's that movie, that documentary about him that came out a few years ago, I think 2018, something like that. I believe it's on Netflix, called I Am Not Your Guru. And it's a documentary about one of those week-long events he does in the arenas, 10,000 people, week-long event. Everybody's paying $2, $3, $4,000 to be there. And it shows just what happens back behind the scenes, as well as him on stage and working one-on-one with people in the audience, but also shows him in the morning after he gets up, and he's doing his physical exercise that he needs to do for himself. And he does the cold plunge, he does the little jumping on the little trampoline to awaken his adrenal glands. He does his meditation work that he feels is right for him, and you see him doing the work. This guy started in 1980. That big breakout book of his, Awaken the Giant Within, came out in I think the late 80s, early 1990s. But he started in 1980, 1981. He's been doing this work for 40 years, and he's still doing it. And you
Mm.
see him backstage, he's talking to the producers and the event managers and the people who run the small groups and the breakout groups. And then he goes out on stage and he becomes Tony Robbins. But what's fascinating to me about it is that right before he walks out on stage, he puts himself in state. Just like
Mm.
an athlete puts themselves in the zone before they walk out onto the field or go to get up to the starting line or whatever event they're doing. They'll put themselves in that zone. They'll put themselves in state. And he does that before he walks out on stage, because no one, he's a father, he's a husband, he's a business person. He's got tax issues. He's got to talk to his accountant. He's got to figure out where they're going to go next year for events and start booking that. He's got to talk to his kids because there's trouble at school. He wants to plan to go out to dinner with his wife, but nobody wants to see that Tony Robbins. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but you just
Mm.
drop down, $4,000. You want to see the Tony Robbins. And so he makes sure he's that person when he walks out on stage. So he puts himself in state. This guy's been doing it for 40 years. He not only still does the meditation work and the physical work to keep his body where he wants it to be, but he's also putting himself in state to be the Tony Robbins before he walks out on stage. And so we all have these various hats we wear. I myself, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son to my parents who are getting older, but I'm also a hypnotherapist. But I run my own business. I have to do social media marketing. I have all these different parts of me, these different hats I wear. But I want to make sure when I walk into a session with somebody, I'm Craig Meriwether, the hypnotherapist, who's going to
Yeah.
help this person fix themselves and facilitate that healing that they're going to do themselves. I don't want to be the father. That'd be very inappropriate. Or if I do hypnotherapy all day, and I go out on a date with my wife and we go out to dinner, I better switch over into my husband role, because it'd be a
Mm.
drag for her if all of a sudden I'm starting to do hypnotherapy all night long. And so same with all of us. If you have that meeting, if you have the speech you have to give, if you have to make those calls, if you have to talk with the investors, you have to talk with clients, if you're a service provider, put yourself in state, just like Tony Robbins does, or any athlete does before they walk out to perform at their best. Give yourself 5 minutes. Sit in your car for 5 minutes before you walk into work. Sit in your car for 5 minutes before you walk back home, and turn it off and leave it in the car, in your briefcase or in your backpack, and then walk into your home as the loving, kind person that is going to thrive at home. Be that person. But it may take a little bit
Mm.
to put yourself in state and put yourself in that role. And so just watching the masters and how they do it is a great way to figure out how to move through business, through service, through family, through just life, and say, well, how find somebody that's very successful at what they do. How do they do it? And
Yeah.
I'll bet you, guarantee you, they're spending a little bit of time every day, not only focusing on their future selves, but also putting themselves in state depending on what the next task is going to be. Whether it's a meeting with investors or a meeting with a client, that's two different aspects of you as a business person. And so which is more appropriate for you? Who's the person do you need to be walking into investors or the bank or the board meeting, as opposed to getting a new client? Those are two different aspects of you. And by putting yourself in state, just taking a few minutes, even if that's all you have, just to focus on who you need to be, and then putting yourself in that role and becoming that person. And even if you have to pretend, the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So pretend you're that person. Pretend
Yes.
you have the confidence. Even if you don't have it yet, you can pretend you have the confidence. And what is strongest within your mind is what you do over and over again. So the more you practice this, the better you get at it. And so if I was to leave, I know we're kind of running up against time, but if I was to leave somebody with just one piece of advice, first off, it doesn't take months and months and years to create this change work. And while it's super important to talk about what you're going through and to have that second pair of eyes, especially in business, but even like relationships and things, just going to somebody, get some advice about how to deal with the relationship issues, family issues, just how you're feeling. That's super important. But in terms of creating change work of even deep healing, doesn't take months and months and years. Just as instantaneously as that trauma or that hurt was created, maybe back when you were a child, why wouldn't you be able to heal it instantaneously? Why do you think that would be true? Who told you that was true? And what if it wasn't true? What if your subconscious mind was that powerful? And I've seen healing, as many therapists and hypnotherapists have seen, people do extraordinary healing of hurt and pain they've been holding on to for 40, 50, 60 years, and just let it go because it was time. And they got rid of that file and they put in new instructions, and you're allowed to do that. You have the right, you have the ability, you have the power to do that. And that's how amazing you are. And so again, if I was going to leave, just with one piece of advice, take some time every day and practice who you want to be. And if you're noticing those blocks, if you're noticing that fear, you're noticing that anxiety coming up, you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to get up and give that speech, and all of a sudden this whelm of anxiety and fear come up. Okay, yeah, there may be something there that you need to work on, because if those warning signals are being that loud, that is actually preventing you from scheduling that speech or the workshop or the event that you have to do. If it's getting to the point where the anxiety and the fear is so loud that it's preventing you from moving forward, then yes, there may be some deeper work that needs to be done that's unconscious to you. And that's what people can find frustrating about talk therapy, not to disparage another therapy that can be very helpful. But if you're not aware of what the problem is,
How
talking
can you?
about fears is not going to help you. And I hear that from a lot of people. I hear it helps a lot of people, but also I get a lot of people say, I went to talk therapy for a couple of years and nothing changed. It's because you're talking about a problem or several problems, but you're not talking about the problem because it's unconscious. It's within that 95% subconscious mind filed away in the filing cabinet. And you may not be aware of what it is, because maybe it did happen when you're 2 or 3 or 4 years old. And even if it's that young and you were a child and you can't remember that far back, your subconscious mind knows exactly what the problem is because it's trying to protect you from it. And that's why we don't work with the conscious mind in hypnotherapy. We work with the subconscious mind where the problem is held. And that's why, again, this work doesn't have to take months and months and years. We can do this with, generally what I tell people, 3 sessions, 4 sessions, and we're done. That's how I want to say it's easy, because sometimes it's deep work, but it's transformative work, and it's healing work. And your subconscious mind is powerful enough to know what you need to heal. So not only do you know what the problem is, even if it's unconscious, you know what the answer is too. You know what to do to heal. And that's what I was saying before. I don't go fix anybody. And in and of itself, hypnotherapy doesn't fix anybody. You fix yourself because you know what the problem is. And more importantly, you know what the answer is. And so
Wow.
that was me on a big, huge monologue for about half an hour. But I love talking about this because the power people have is extraordinary. And many people don't just realize it because they're not told. And we have, especially here in maybe the Western world, we have this, we look for other people to help us. And of course,
Mm,
yeah, break my leg, I'm in a car accident, I have appendicitis, take me to the doctor.
mm.
But sometimes this deeper hurt that we have in our heart, in our
Yes.
soul, in our emotional hurt and pain, we're allowed to deal with that ourselves. And again,
Mm,
it's your fault or that it should have happened or to blame the victim, but that hurt and pain was installed by you. Those instructions on how to react and feel about that situation, even if it's now unconscious, was put in there by you, which makes it very empowering because, well, if you're the one who put it in there, that means you can
mm.
take it out. And so
Wow.
we are that powerful. And if you know, if you have a slight idea of who you want to be, you can start practicing that today. And
Mm,
you will wire that into your brain, into your neurology, into your physiology, into your brain, into your nervous system, into your body. And practice, practice, practice. Like I said, there's a relentlessness to this. Ask the Dalai Lama when you stop meditating. Ask, you can't anymore, but could have asked Jack LaLanne when you stop working out. You just keep doing the work. Ask Tony Robbins when you stop doing the work. Just keep doing it, and you will get there.
wow. This is so profound. I love this topic so much. So I know many people are listening and they're like, okay, how can I take this further? How can you help me, Craig? What
Yeah.
would you say to
Probably the two best places if you want to find out more about me and what I do, or even, let's talk over the phone about what you want to work on. I live in Arizona. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, up in the mountains at 7,000 feet. We get snow. I do a lot of shoveling every year. And the name of my hypnotherapy business is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. If you just Google Flagstaff Hypnosis, on Google, Flagstaff Hypnosis, I'll come up, you'll see it, Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. I also have ACE Any Test. That might be a little easier to remember. ACE Any Test, which is my test anxiety course, but you can also find me through there.
Okay, so listeners, don't worry. I'm going to add all of those links in the show notes. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube Music, they'll be in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, they'll be in the description. This has been such a profound session for me because many of the things you talked about, I can relate, like all of my childhood trauma that's been holding me back. I want to release them, but somehow they keep running in the background. And like you said, I tell myself it wasn't my fault, right? Like, so I need to let go of that trauma so I can ascend into the person I want to be, which is this happy, free, wealthy woman. And that's why I said I have been exploring hypnotherapy as well. And this is a field I think a lot of people will benefit from. So I'm very glad we had this conversation today, Craig.
Me too. I'm
Any
glad
last
you invited me onto the show. I
before I let you?
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Just because I appreciate you inviting me onto your show, and it's fun talking with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Hey, very quickly before you go, if this podcast inspired or encouraged you in any way, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and share this with a friend. It means a lot to us, and we appreciate your kindness and generosity in doing this. We'll see you back here on the next episode. Bye bye.